Hi, this is Coralla Ficklin at CorallaFicklin.com, WelcomeNetwork.com, iStudyCards.com, iStudyGuides.com. If you want any of my writings, you can go to Pedian, P-E-D-I-A-N, Pedians.com. Okay, now this is going to be difficult. First, let me explain. I am not a Spanish speaker. I learned Spanish not as a child. I learned it as an adult. I lived in the country, and I'm saying all this to let you know that I am not a Spanish speaker. So when I'm teaching pronunciation and I'm speaking Spanish, by no means do I think I sound like someone who speaks Spanish as a native language. I know I don't. Okay? Some words I can pronounce better than others because it's not confusing from my language to Spanish. Some words, even though I know psychologically, intellectually, how do you pronounce, I still, my tongue, my throat, all of it won't do it. Okay. But even though I probably have a very strong American accent when I speak Spanish, there are words that have been confusing to me in Spanish, and even though maybe my tongue won't cooperate, my brain will. So I do research on those words to help people like myself who want to understand why it's difficult or maybe impossible, depending on how people hear my Spanish, to speak Spanish like a native speaker. One group of words that I have particularly, and I think English speakers in general have problems with, are words that begin with the EX. Now, for example, a Spanish speaker has a lot of problems with words that begin with S, because instead of them saying S, they say ES. I had students when in Santa Barbara. There's a main street, and it's called State Street. State Street. And my students wouldn't say State Street; they would say Estate. And I would, from the verb, I would stop. And that way I would try to get them in the habit of stopping the and then just going okay. I didn't have anyone like that with me in Mexico. People are very nice. They want to, correct me. So I would be pronouncing words. I would pronounce words incorrectly, and the people were so nice they wouldn't say anything. I needed somebody to say, no, that's not how you do it. Okay. Now, words that I would have problems with are words that begin with the EX. And the reason is, the problem is in Spanish. Spanish isn't the problem. God bless Spanish. Spanish is consistent. Words that begin with EX are pronounced basically the same. They're pronounced as if they begin with ES, because the X is pronounced more like an S. Okay? So Spanish isn't the problem. The problem is English. Okay? Because a lot of these words are true cognates to English. True cognates to English. So when I see the word, I'm able to recognize the word. Okay. But one thing, so I said to myself, why am I not pronouncing the word? Even though I understand the word, even though I hear the word, but when I say it, and when someone in Mexico says it, it doesn't sound the same. I don't sound like them. And then what I did is whenever I don't understand something, I go to the library, or if I'm lucky enough, if I have my dictionaries with me, I'll go to my dictionaries and I'll start doing research. And what did I find? I found out that the problem, as I said, isn't Spanish, it's English. English also has EX, but do you know how many different sounds the EX has in English? I've counted 6. The EX sometimes is pronounced like the IKS, as in expose, or as in export, or as in express. And you can hear I'm going ek, and you can hear it in the back of my throat. The EX is pronounced sometimes just like the IK, not the IKS, okay? Like the IK, as in expel, expend, expense, experience, experimental. So what I'm doing, and I'm probably doing this subconsciously, because, for example, expel, expelar, expeler is like in Spanish, but when I see that, subconsciously, I'm pronouncing what it is in English. And I'm not saying ES, I'm saying IK. Then, the ES also has the pronunciation of the EKS. Oh, by the way, when I said IKS, I'm talking about the short I. Okay, because you know there's the long I and the short I. And the short I, God knows has how many pronunciations. And the E, the short E. So I'm talking about the short I and the short E. So there's the EX that's pronounced with the EKS, such as, let me give it to you in English, exceed, expertise, expert, exclusiveness, excavate. Okay. Then, now all these are cognates. So if you, when you come into iStudy guides or iStudy cards, you'll see the words. You'll see the word in, first you'll see the word in English, and then you'll see the word in Spanish. You can come even in to look at the website, or you can go and download the cards. So you'll see the words in Spanish and in English, and you'll see the word looks almost the same in English and in Spanish, okay? They're almost the same. Expropiación, for example, or exclusividad, right? But you can see I'm sort of, like this because I'm trying to pronounce that EX like ES instead of like I see it in my own language, which is pronounced like the EKS. Okay. Then the EX sometimes in English is pronounced like the EK, such as expectation, expedition, expedite. So the problem is in Spanish. The problem is English. And English is my language, right? And I've been speaking, and when I went to Mexico to live, or when I went to Latin America to live, English is in my head. And if you don't know all this stuff consciously, and when I first went there, because I went there as a kid, as a young kid, but all this stuff was already in my head. And I knew that I wasn't pronouncing the word like they do in Spanish, even though I understood the word because it's a true cognate. I didn't understand why my mouth wasn't making the sound correctly. And the reason is that in my head, I was pronouncing the EX as you pronounce the EX, depending on the word, as you do in English. Right? So the problem is, for the English speaker, is to be aware that the EX in Spanish is not pronounced like the EX in English. It's pronounced like the ES, expresar. And I find it difficult. The Spanish speaker probably saying, but why is it difficult? It's only one pronunciation. But if you've been taught 5 or 6 pronunciation, it's difficult. Okay. For the Spanish speaker, you have to be aware that the EX in English has many different pronunciations. And depending on the word, that will give you the pronunciation. So if you come into iStudy Guides or iStudy Cards, I will have the word in Spanish, how it's pronounced in Spanish, which isn't a problem. Then I'll have the word in English and how it's pronounced phonetically in English. So you'll know whether the pronunciation is with the E, it's like the EK, like the IK, like the IKS, like the EKS, and there are words that are pronounced before I go, like the IG, such as exhaust, exhibit, exhausted. That's like an IG sound. Okay? So you're going to have to learn about 5 or 6 different pronunciations. But feel good. I have problems even though I'm going from 6-7 pronunciation to 1 pronunciation. Okay, this is Coralla Ficklin at CorallaFicklin.com.